Hello, thanks for joining. In today's session, we're going to be talking about the Power Platform, how to get better control of it, and other SaaS application deployments. My name is Funtrol Reddy, and I am a Principal Solutions Engineer at AvePoint. So let's jump in. First off, let's take a quick tour of the Power Platform. In today's world of the modern workplace, digital transformation, Microsoft 365 is providing many great services to the business for getting things done. We have a lot of common services that are very familiar to us. Fast forward, today, there's a lot of excitement around what we call the Power Platform. The Power Platform is really empowering everyone in your organization, not just to collaborate on documents, conversation, chats, plans, but take it to the next level with intuitive, collaborative, extensible, low code tools that make it easy to create efficient and flexible solutions. Hence the phrase, the citizen developer. Easy for anyone within the modern workplace to achieve using the Power Platform. The Power Platform allows us to do a couple of key areas around common challenges or needs within the organization. Number one, it offers the Power BI service, which allows us to create, see, and analyze data that's very insightful for us. A lot of great dashboards, graphs, charts, visual reports so that we can make decisions on that data for our business. Power Apps turns ideas into, the organization's solutions by enabling someone to build a custom app tailored to their specific needs within the organization. Great agile way to provide that ability to the organization. Power Automate allows us to increase productivity. Think of manual tasks, the steps that are involved, taking that process and automating it using Power Automate to get things done faster by giving everyone the ability to automate those organizational processes. And finally, we have Power Virtual Agents. Easily build chatbots that actually engage with us in a conversation with our customers, our employees. Very easy to create. Again, no code required. Let's take a look at a couple of examples of each one. Power BI, analyze. So here's an example of I'm leveraging Teams and I have a team called sales and marketing. Inside of sales and marketing, I have a, a channel called monthly reports. This is where we go and we talk about monthly reports for our organization. So in this case, we're using a tabbed app that's essentially a Power BI report that is surfaced through the Teams platform and allows us to have conversations, discussions. We can get easy access to this Power BI report and stay within Teams and be very efficient by having this data presented to us inside of the Teams platform. Great user experience leveraging Teams and Power BI. Another example is building a Power App that allows us, in this example, to interact with our users around training, for example. So here we would build an app, and the goal here is to make this app available to our users wherever they may be working. Maybe that's remote and they're on specific devices. Maybe it's a tablet device or their mobile phone or even through the browser. Whatever the case may be, we want to make it accessible and give them the ability to interact with our application and get information, update data, so on and so forth within this no code solution called Power Apps. Power Automate. Another great example here, we're leveraging Teams as the platform here, just as an example. And here we're actually tying into Twitter, and we're actually kind of scraping Twitter and looking for certain keywords that are relevant to our organization, our business. We want to understand, the social impact, who's chatting about, our brand or our marketing release, our campaigns. And as they're talking about that, we want to funnel that into where we're working inside of Teams. So I can have, again, back to my sales and marketing team, I have a specific channel that is earmarked for social media, right? We're going to drive all of the tweets and conversations that we've told specifically whenever we hear that or see that, let's bring that into Teams so that we can have that posted and have conversations and discussions around that. Very easy to do with Power Automate. Virtual Power Agents assist. So this is helping us engage with our customers. Think of help desks. Think of a customer service type of business or organization where you want to have a good user experience. So you want to have scaling that allows your virtual power agents to answer common questions that your customers would be asking your service desk, for example. Um, your entry level customer feedback lines and things of that nature. Wouldn't it be great if we had a virtual power agent that was designed to greet the customer, ask them what their areas of need or interest are, and then be able to respond to that based upon, again, the intelligence built in around those queries, and then having the relevant answers presented to the user or customer there. Great, again, user experience. And you can think of applications today that leverage a common model around this. For example, a roadside service app where just you're on your phone and you're greeted by a virtual agent asking you specific information, and then based upon that, responding to that and providing the service that you need. Common example. So the Power Platform is what we call citizen development, giving our users the agile, rapid, low code, or sometimes no code offerings to make their lives better within their particular departments or where they work within an organization and provide that scale, quick to market type of solutions around their needs. Great, great experience for our users. But hold on a second. How do we really control all this? If this is so easy, I can imagine this may get out of control, where we have a lot of users, citizens creating things. How do we know what they're creating? What data are they pulling from? Who's sharing that? with individuals inside or outside, potentially our organization. So this is where we want to move the conversation into what's some good starting things to consider when we talk about good guidance when we're leveraging or exposing the Power Platform to our organizations. So let's dive into that topic a bit. So first, we want to have a good um, approach, or we want to think about a good strategy around how are we going to manage the Power Platform for um, the business that we're offering here. So we want to talk a little bit about that. What are some good best practices to kind of start thinking about managing the Power Platform? Obviously, with everything we do, we want to have a security focus or mindset, and we want to understand what's good practices around securing our crown jewels of data and access and things of that nature. We want to have a good model to begin that, so that we feel confident that we can offer the Power Platform, but have the necessary security in place there. And finally, what about reporting and auditing? We're probably going to want to know or understand who is using the Power Platform, who's making changes, who's you know um, accessing certain pieces or components. What parts of the Power Platform? So we want to be able to report on that and provide that to an auditor or an individual that needs to see and consume that. And again, these are just the basic things to consider. We can even expand on these in greater depth. But for this conversation, again, we're starting the topic around the management, securing and being able to report for your Power Platform deployment there. So let's talk about manage. And when we talk about manage, the first thing we want to kind of understand is that everything begins with the identity, the user. So with that being in Microsoft 365 services, that's great because everything is centrally managed and located in terms of your tenant and your subscription there. So your identity allows you to access the Power Platform through the licensing that is granted to the user to consume, create reports, to analyze through Power BI, to create apps, to create flows or automation, and again the virtual power agents. So that's where all of that begins and comes to life through the licensing that is assigned to the identity. From there, um, where you do or your work, where you create your citizen development is really predicated on what we call the environment, where you are allowed to do that type of development, what data is available to you. All of that is controlled within what we call an environment. And then we have the applications, components, and solutions that can be defined specifically for specific environments based upon your organization. How many environments do you need? What type of development will be allowed in the environments? So on and so forth there. And again, all of this is tied to the authentication within your tenant or tenants within Azure Active Directory. So when we talk about things that are important when it comes to design considerations, again, licensing is the first control gate that allows access to the Power Platform. Your licensing is tied to your tenant, and we'll get into examples of Azure Active Directory groups here. And again, the Power Platform then provides the different licensing constructs that give you the ability to work within the various services there. And there's different types of offerings for the licensing that Microsoft can, provide and work with an enterprise there. There's trials that are available from a licensing perspective. There's a pay-as-you-go model. So a lot of different offerings when it comes to those ability to do that. Um, and again, good best practice is to, look at security and a role-based access model within the environments. That's always a best practice. And again, thinking about, the breakout of your various environments based upon your needs there. So let's get into a couple of examples of what we mean by, the management part as it pertains to the identities there. So think of, your tenant, your users, for example. If I'm a relatively small or medium-sized organization, I can easily go in and pick on a user and I can say, yes, let's go ahead and give him licensing for the Power Platform. So I can give him licensing to, you know, Power Apps. I can give him licensing to virtual Power Agents. And then part of, the Microsoft, 365 E3 or E5 SKU, maybe even Power BI, for example. So here is the basic premise of licensing a user for the Power Platform. Okay. Now, if you're talking, kind of more larger scale, and you're going to be doing this, for, a larger enterprise, you probably want to, go with the common model of, groups. So let's create our groups within Azure Active Directory. Let's add in our users that we're going to earmark as our citizen developers, our makers of the various pieces of the Power Platform. And then let's get them in a central group and let's manage the group, right? So that's a best practice model there. So create our group, give it a common good naming convention there, and then let's add in our users. A lot of different ways we can do that, statically or dynamically. Um, but again, the premise here is creating that group. And then once we have the group, now let's add our licensing to the group. So if I'm a member of the group, then whatever licensing is available, we'll get into that a little bit later on about tracking and reporting on that. I automatically inherit the licensing that allows me to do my citizen development there. So good practice model, again, for your larger scale rollout of your user identities and licensing for the Power Platform. Okay. Now, the next level that comes into play here is the environment. So you want to think about, what's a good environment model for us? Are we going to have a default environment that's going to be used, for, common type of citizen development? It could be production related or non-production related. It's really up to you. But again, you're going to have a default environment with your tenancy anyway, but what do you want that default environment to be leveraged for example? And again, as you can see here, you can also have a production environment or a dev or QA or testing environment. It's really up to you in terms of your scale, your licensing, how much of this Power Platform is going to be available and consumed by your citizens, your business units, your organization. Maybe you have a DevOps model where they will be, you know, responsible for creating these enterprise wide type of solutions leveraging the Power Platform. So good guidance here is to, think about strategically, what would be the environments, because from the environment level, this is where we get granular controls around, what applications, what data is available, what roles and policies do we want to apply to each environment. And so what that looks like inside of the portal, the Power Platform Admin Center. Again, you'll have a default environment, and then you can create your other environments for the various purposes inside of the Power Platform Admin Center there. So an example of that. So let's say I'm in a sales organization, and thought about this, our team has thought about this, and we've decided it's good to have three separate environments for our sales organization. One for testing certain applications or reports, or whatever we're building that has specific data needs within what we call the data verse. So we can have one earmarked for test, same for development, and then one for production. So this is a good scale model, and then have a good, development life cycle as we promote and move these solutions, apps from the Power Platform from one environment to the other. Great common model for that type of practice there. Let's talk about security now. So when we talk about securing the Power Platform, we really kind of want to understand, first and foremost, remember we talk about identities, and then we talk about environments. So within an environment, we want to create a policy that really controls and determines what I can build in terms of connecting to data, or connecting to services. So a policy is something that your admins would, configure for your environment. So let's take my default environment, for example. And if this is kind of a, a common area where we allow, our common citizen development, I may want to allow, certain, pieces of the Dataverse to be available for consumption, for, building apps and connecting to data. And I want to control that. But there may be cases where for production, I want to restrict that to, specific data, specific connections. I don't want to allow connections from outside, or, connections into, our organization. So I can create a policy that controls that. And that's what we call a DLP policy. And so you can apply that policy to your specific environments within your deployment of the Power Platform. So back into the Power Platform Admin Center. On the left-hand navigation, you would see data policies, and this will allow you to create your policy, give it a name, and there's several pre-built what we call connectors. And so Microsoft has a lot of these first party connectors that allow you to connect to the Outlook service. If I'm creating things where I want to send mail, for example, or look up users, or again, anything native within Microsoft services, those are what we call the first party connectors. There are connectors being built by third parties, organizations that are saying, hey, citizen development is great. It's catching on, it's taking off. We are actually creating marketplace ready connectors that organizations can buy or purchase from the marketplace and use them within their deployment of the Power Platform, right? Those can be available, made available, but you can actually restrict which ones you allow within a policy and which ones you block within a policy. And again, tie that to a specific environment. And so this is a good best practice because remember, we want to be good stewards of the data that we're interacting with, and we want to make sure, that we're protecting, from leakage and things of that nature. So that's a good guidance strategy when we're talking about the power platform there. Okay, reporting. So reporting, there will be cases where someone will want to know who's using the power platform, who's modifying the platform, um, who's creating apps, who's changing, who's, all of those pieces of the power platform that is all audited and tracked. Why? Because everything starts with the identity. Everything starts in the Microsoft services. Therefore, we can leverage our native reporting as kind of that first step or that first point to really consume and get some of reporting in terms of what's being used by the Power Platform, the licensing, all those activities are being centrally audited and stored that we can easily report on out of the services there. And so you can actually allow certain individuals through role assignment, what dashboards that they have available to them to consume certain reports. That makes it very easy to tie in and provide that access there. And so this is a common example of how I can go into, the Microsoft Security and Compliance Center if I have access to that, and I can actually query, the audit logs around the Power Platform activity. Tell me when apps or flows are being created, when they're being modified, reports being shared, for example. All that information can be queried and then present it, and then I can export that out and hand that off to an auditor or consume it for reporting at a future date if I need to. Okay, so that's a quick tour of, kind of the basics of the Power Platform, the critical, or common components of the platform, and then good starting guidance around, how to get your controls in place to give you some starting point for good management there and security and reporting. So, uh, what I want to do now is spend a little bit of time on, ways in which we at AvePoint help with, you know, giving customers, more insights into the Power Platform, things that you can report on, and how to make that a bit easier as well. And so here at AvePoint, we have what we call a confidence platform. This is a cloud hosted in Azure offering that allows us to easily connect to a customer's tenant and then provide a lot of services around your SaaS and data management. And this is again our AvePoint Confidence platform that provides a lot of the solutions here. So a common example for a lot of customers is to really understand, what subscriptions are being used within our tenant. So we want to be able to identify usage and maybe adoption by the subscription type. So maybe I have the subscription of, Dynamics or Power Automate. So give me reporting and insights based upon that subscription so that I can make good decisions around, future planning, around purchasing, discounts, procurement of that. So having a good, easy reporting is really important for a lot of customers. And so that's an example of, we are be able to provide that for a lot of customers. In this case, specific to maybe the Power Platform subscription services there. Another example where, maybe a customer wants to understand, from a user perspective, you know, what are the users actually using? Because remember, everything starts with the user or the identity as it pertains to the Power Platform citizen development. So wouldn't it be great to start to track and identify, for example, underutilization, meaning we've allocated, this service premium offering license to several users. But when we look at the reports, the users for some reason are not really using those said services. So maybe there's a scenario where we want to reallocate those licensing to another business unit that's really taking off their citizen development and really needs more licensing to do more of that. So that's an example where we want to have good reporting around that activity, and then make decisions on reallocating or even um, you know truing up our licensing if we're not using as much or need more, as we kind of partner with Microsoft around those conversations around that. So another example of a user-based view based upon um, consumption or adoption of the Power Platform there. And then finally, looking at kind of what if I could actually provide some type of automation based upon events, prediction of events that happen where maybe I want to remove a license or restrict access based upon, maybe a mover leaver scenario. Maybe if I'm starting in a department and I've created, apps and flows and things of that nature. But now, I've left the organization, you know, first and foremost, are those apps and flows and reports still needed, right? We need to be able to reallocate that if the user is no longer with the organization, as an example. What if, there's normal attrition inside of an organization where I'm changing roles? I haven't left the organization, but because of my role has changed, that may trigger a change to my licensing in terms of the Power Platform. So couple different scenarios there where we can actually tell, based upon criteria matches, based upon events, what to do, actions when certain scenarios are triggered or fired as it impacts, for example, the Power Platform in this scenario, licensing there. So another great example. So as we wrap up, again, we want to again reemphasize that the Power Platform is the next great thing offering inside of Microsoft 365 that allow us to do some really agile, great type of empowerment, being a user within my organization, where actually we are really creating an environment where we're empowering the users to do more and making it very easy for them with the Power Platform offerings, and giving our more mature customers that have, development teams, um, the time to really work on the bigger, more complex scenarios, and let them focus their valuable time and efforts on those, while giving us the agile capabilities with the Power Platform to speed and being very efficient for our own needs within our particular departments or areas there. So with that being said, I want to thank you for your time, for listening. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. And again, thank you for listening.